I have dedicated my professional career to the study and control of arthropods.
Hi, this is a video response to a video by Karensfaith. Her series, or her video called Fallen Part 6, Cover-Ups in Archaeology Part 1. Before I start this, I do want to state, Karen, I know you mentioned him in part in the middle of your video, but all of your text, everything you say is word for word, not one word changed. From an article in Nexus magazine by David Hatcher Childress. And yes, you do mention his name, but you don't explicitly state that your whole video, all of your text is one giant quote from him. You have a quote from him, but you don't mention that at all. But that aside, that is plagiarism. You really should have given him credit. At least mention that all of it came from that. But anyway, that aside, I'm going to go through your video bit by bit. Maybe it may take more than one part for me to get through all of this, because it is enormous amounts of misinformation, and you probably know that. You probably don't care, but it is absolute misinformation. So you right at the very beginning of your video, you talk about the in the Death Valley, the supposed Death Valley skeletons. That's completely mythological anyway. I mean, it's ridiculous. Okay, there's absolutely nothing there. Do you think that 80 acres of cave systems with these fantastic halls and giant, I mean, they supposedly had like Viking halls. That's what the claim made, that there were giant carved stone rooms with tables where it could have seated like 120 people. All of this, somehow, with all of the thousands of people exploring Death Valley, has never been refound. But anyway, that aside, I do have the article on it, and it's all based, the whole story is based on a 1947 news story. That's it. That's the only actual evidence there is for that. But anyway, that's ridiculous. Now, you mentioned in here, I love it. I love how, I love tracing, when you find these things, and then tracing, the origin of the misinformation. But you talk about the Spiro Mound, excavations in the Spiro Mound in the 1930s. First of all, you probably don't know this because you rely on, faulty sources, clearly. But the Spiro Mound, there's no such thing as the Spiro Mound. It is the Spiro Mounds, which is a large complex. I mean, in the central complex, which is specifically where you're talking about, there's 9 mounds, all with different names on them. The one you're referring to, in case you don't know this, it's called the Craig Mound. That was the one where, first of all, the archaeologists didn't originally excavate it. It was excavated by looters. In fact, most of the stuff from that mound was sold. It is probable that any stories of giant skeletons found in that were based on these stories by looters, if they even exist at all. But the reality is the skeletons were found in the mound. Dozens of skeletons were found in the Craig Mound. Those skeletons are cataloged and exist, and they're well within normal human size. There was no suits of armor found and all of that. I mean, it's ridiculous to make that up. And it is made up. Okay, that's been well documented. Unfortunately, looters destroyed a lot of the skeletons. We found the fragments that were remained because after they looted it, they blew it up with dynamite, destroying the artifacts that were more ephemeral and seemingly not worthwhile to them, like the things made of skin and feathers and stuff like that. So a huge treasure of American archaeology was destroyed by looters. However, anyway, the point is that it's ridiculous. Obviously, just from saying the Craig Mound, you don't. Anyway. Now, this is what's funny. I love it. Okay, I love to be able to trace back. When you see something, you see a misspelling, and you see this misspelling, and then you find that supposed researchers copy the misspelling, which shows they didn't actually research. They just copied, cut, and pasted from other sources. And your Mr. Childress did the same thing here, because it talks about the Crumf Cave. All right? The famous Crump Cave. Well, it's not Crump Cave. There's no such thing. All right? In fact, you find, if you Google Crump, all you find are freaking Christian nutjob Nephilim sites talking about it, right? The story, the actual article, the actual published research, the actual archaeological site is called the Crump P, instead of P, the Crump Cave. All right? This is so funny because the whole thing is based on these. I have the article. In fact, the book is available through. I don't. It's way too long of a link to put up, but just search for Crump Cave. And you'll find Google Books has the entire book online. You can read the whole thing. And I think that's quite hilarious. It's the administrative report of the United States National Museum. And it talks about the skeletons that were found, all normal human sized, not one mention of giant skeletons, and the supposed possible coffins that were found. Okay? Now the coffins were 7.5 feet long. My God, they must be for giants, right? Right? You think so? Just for fun, Google coffin dimensions. I was just looking online where it talks about, the average dimensions of a coffin and how to make your own coffin and all this kind of crap. There's a ton of stuff about it. Coffins are 8 feet long, ones that we make today. So if I go into my local mortuary and I look at the coffins and I say, my God, this thing is 8 feet long. There must be giants here, right? Does that prove there's giants here in Juneau, Alaska? Or is that just, a coffin? You don't squeeze people in, right? So anyway, even if they are coffins, and apparently the report even states that it's not verified that they're coffins, they differ in significant ways from coffins. They may be water troughs, actually. But that's that aside. Even if they are coffins, 7.5 feet doesn't make them proof of giants, unless you're a little touched in the head. Now this is the funny one. I thought this was hilarious because I actually have the article. You talk about Shemaiah in the Aleutians, okay? And the engineer that found the skeletons with the skulls that were 22 to 24 inches long. You do recognize, by the way, that a 22-inch human skull, if proportional, would be a human being in excess of 20 feet tall. You kind of got to ask yourself how that would function physiologically, would even work, especially in the Aleutians. You do know that the Aleutian Islands are fairly difficult places to make a living for a large animal. But that aside, the point is that the entire story is based on a book by Ivan T. Sanderson, the famous Bigfoot hunter. Who wrote in the 60s and 70s on Bigfoot, lots of stories on Bigfoot and the Abominable Snowman, and fun reads. All right, but he wrote about this Shemaiah find, and all of it. And his book is the original source of all of that stuff. Everything about Shemaiah is from Ivan T. Sanderson's book called Things, from 1967, and he said that he got a 4-page letter from a woman talking about what her grandson or son found in the Aleutian Islands during World War II, and talked about these giant skulls and everything like that. He investigated it, right? Now remember, this guy believes in Bigfoot and Sasquatch and all these cryptozoological things. That's what he studies. And he concluded that it must be untrue, because first of all, there's no possible way a human being could be that tall. No evidence for it whatsoever, and he found other people who were there. Okay, he couldn't locate the specific person. He located, get this, he located the other people who participated in building this runway. It was an airport. It was a runway for bombers trying to retake Attu Island in World War II, and none of them remembered anything about giants. They found mammoth bones, they found human bones, they found lots of things, and tons of the artifacts were taken. Some of them still exist, and they are at the Smithsonian. In fact, they're part of the American Indian Museum now in Washington, D.C. Lots and lots of. It's an important Aleut archaeological site. No giants mentioned. He concluded, no giants found. Okay, so that's the sole source of that. Okay, that the whole thing is Ivan T. Sanderson's book.